Breaking news part two. So, as I just set the stage for showing you a couple of those things that have happened in the area, and there's actually been several others that I have not reported on directly. I've talked about the coded language that are used in there and the deceptive language that, again, is boilerplate, comes right from what the police want the press to say, but here's the other side of it. So whistleblowers Bonnie Burkhart and Stephen Coker, who runs a forensic digital analyst office business, and who advises litigants in courts as to whether their devices have been tampered with or not, whether they have any evidence that they might be able to bring to court of some kind of shenanigans, has seen for years that police have manipulated evidence, and he goes on to share exactly how that's done. One of the common ways that they do it is to download everything, offload it, you could say, off of the device, tinker with it with Celebrite and other technologies, and then reinstall it back onto the device. And it is claimed, and I'm not an expert on this, that you can tell when that was done, where it was done, and they can't necessarily erase that. Ms. Burkhart also has a background in computer forensics and has previously worked with in the intelligence community, and wrote a book about how police do it, why they do it, and they both come to this from very innocent backgrounds. Ms. Burkhart knew people through her church who were nailed by this, and as she heard the stories of what the police were doing, she accessed her training and said, well, we received training, they can't do this. What the police are doing, the local police are only allowed under very strict guidelines into the state police, according to state law and very similar federal law from which it derived. Mr. Coker has more of the forensic background and has noticed various ways that police have tried to not only manipulate evidence, but cover their tracks. And of course, it brings up the obvious question, why? Why would you be doing this? Well, you have to live in a bubble if you believe the police are always doing the right thing and that they never, ever get frustrated and they never decide, we think this guy's guilty. We can't quite prove it, or we want this guy to be guilty. And we have a whole history of manipulating evidence or circumstances and getting your buddies in the precinct to back you up, such that this is something that just continues to go. And it has gone on for a long, long time because it's been successful. That's why it continues. So we've seen it, in the 50s and 60s and 40s and 30s to racially profile and to destroy lives and to hang young black men for something they didn't do. So the idea that somehow the police are sacred, look, folks, we need the police. When they do good work, they do good work. But just like every profession, sometimes people take advantage of their position and they may think they have the high road and they do the wrong thing, and people's lives are ruined and they're destroyed as a result. So I want to share with you what was broken, not by me, but by Caught in the Act, the Substack by certain of our members, and share with you the letter that Ms. Burkhart and Ms. Coker prepared and shared with all of us. So here goes. Here's the Substack that I'm going to share right here. Crucial evidence provided to Congress. Okay, and this comes again out of when my screen clears here. Caught on the web for today, July 3rd. Bonnie Burkhart's resolve to stop law enforcement violating federal laws is beyond impressive. Well, she's certainly very, very tenacious, as I am. We've worked together before, and she has been dismissed often as a crank, and she's not. She knows what her training said. She's a very bright person, and I assisted her in writing her book, Manufacturing Criminals, in 2022, came out originally in December. This comes out of a revised edition of December of 2024, I believe, in which she claims we could save $3 billion a year in fines, okay, because every violation at the state and federal level come to extraordinary fines. And one of the things that they've found is that in ads like this, which could depict a teenager, but it also could project the image of an adult female 20-something, where they impersonate a real live person claiming they're somebody else to intercept communications. You understand, when they are on these sites and they take your chats and they look at them and they pretend to be somebody else, they're intercepting your lawful exercises in order to establish some other nefarious motive. They don't have a warrant to do that. They don't have a reason to do that. They have no probable cause. They do it anyway. And by the way, they're not investigating a crime. They're not investigating a hot tip, as I've indicated. And they use entrapment techniques to manufacture criminals. As I mentioned, a 5-point turnkey program that I've outlined many times. That this effectively is wiretapping is their argument, and that police they have the ability to search computers remotely. Recall I said in one of my recent videos that they go to training camps and they claim that, well, we need to be, get the latest technology so we can get these terrible, terrible people, because sophisticated agents have, great resources, and they are able to deploy things on the deep and dark web that we're just getting a handle of, scratch of the surface. Okay, that's fine, but that's not what they're actually doing. Of the vast majority of their arrests, where they don't have any CP, where there isn't any indication that their marks, their targets are actually going after children, is in adult websites. And this technology allows them to search computers remotely. There was a case about 7-8 years ago in Loudoun County. Somebody's dragged out of his house. His family was put on the lawn in their underwear, and they claimed he had 88 images of child pornography on his devices. He did not. They had a big debate, battle in court, numerous battles, and he was acquitted. Nola process. They didn't have enough evidence. They had nothing. He sued them for $3 million. And lo and behold, right during that lawsuit, 88 images or so appeared again on his computer. Isn't that interesting? He did not hire or have the resources anymore to do that. And he's spending a long prison sentence. Okay. So it is worth, even if you doubt the veracity of this, it's worth investigating it. And Mr. Coker and Ms. Burkhart have. They use Chinese software tools. Why is that highlighted? Well, not from me, but from the website, the Substack Caught in the Web. I think it's Caught in the Act, but it's Caught in the Web. And why? Because the Chinese have been known to hide malware and tracking software in children's toys. They're suspected of doing it on websites, right? We have a whole big debate that's, went in Congress through the Biden administration, all right, to get rid of TikTok. And of course, Trump likes TikTok. They say nice things about him. His followers are on it, so he's all for it. But we have no idea to which the Chinese are using their resources and leveraging it to get information about American thought and culture and to compromise Americans within that framework. No idea what they're doing. And by the way, this is a male officer. It's not a child who is pimping this particular picture. Okay, again, without a warrant, without this person's permission, we don't know who they are. They have claimed variously that these are sometimes police officers. They've also said they're geomorphs, where they're composites of different pieces of a person, or 2 or 3 that they put together. But nowhere do we have a permission structure or any sort of legal framework where this is okay. And of course, they could get billions and trillions in fines if they were successful in prosecuting the police for violations of basically spying on Americans, wiretapping. So they talk about this major fraud, they call it, under U.S. Code 18 U.S. Code 1031. They explain the tactics. They explained that one of the tactics I'll briefly review in the letter, they conduct it by targeting people who are military age, lonely military people who don't, they're in remote locations. They don't necessarily have any kind of great spy technology. They don't have VPNs or anything in particular. LGBTQ community, political opponents. And it can get very, very ugly very quickly, especially now that the Trump's big, beautiful disaster of a bill has passed, which has among it the ability not to, or the proviso that AI cannot be regulated for a period of it's 5 or 10 years. I can't remember. That is going to allow them carte blanche without any regulation to do whatever they want. Watch the disaster, and this is on the Republican Party, absolutely on them. So I.C.A.C does that, and it violates the law. Okay. They talk about several different situations here. They talk about a male officer claimed to be a 15-year-old girl, even though it shows clearly shows a woman, or at the very least, a 17-year-old. But they don't claim that. They claim something ridiculous, and therefore the person who encounters that ad questions it after many, many messages, as that person pretends to be an adult, of course. The second tactic is that they send CP to a political target. That's why I recommend people get VPNs, they get blocking technology, and they don't open anything that they don't know, because if it's child pornography, you can be arrested for possessing and viewing it, even though you had no idea who it was, where, how it was sent to you. It doesn't matter. They will make the charges stick. If you think it doesn't work, it does. Okay. I'm not sure I agree with this large-scale wiretapping without warrant started in 2009 under Obama. It had been going on since the 80s. I think that's wrong, but it did get stepped up because President Obama did push for a extension of the Bush era Patriot Act FISA regulations, which, among other things, allowed for widespread spying, even domestically, which was very, very controversial, because in the foreign spying ring, if you are in communication with somebody who is an American citizen, that's somehow supposed to be strained out of there, as it was explained to me, but very often it is not. The National Security Agency, I did something on that, showed you an article where they actually said that they were not doing that, and in fact, it was found they were doing that, and they were penalized for it. So over and over again, our government lies to us. Shocker, huh? She gives some examples here. They give some examples, rather. And officers plant evidence on confiscated devices as well, and explain a little bit about how that happens. Okay. It is stunning, the raids that will happen. As somebody who was victimized by an FBI raid, searching for somebody else, but nevertheless injured and wrecked my house, destroyed my front door and the security system, etc., all which had to be repaired, and then fought me tooth and nail not to have to pay the bill for it. And we ended up settling on something like 2/3 of the cost, because we were tired of fighting and they were just ridiculous. So here you see some of the things that they use. And again, this comes from the very excellent Substack Caught in the Web. And Caught in the Web does some excellent job analyzing this. I want you to know, too, there's something called Uncage Us, one word, UNCAGEUS, which is on Facebook, which talks, again, how the net nannies and the I.C.A.C operations work. We have Stinging Back, which is a podcast that delves into it in a very heady way. It has guest hosts, some of whom are Sting victims, some of whom are Sting adjacent victims as relatives and others, and still others are police officers and experts who have dealt with this, a lawyer who've dealt with this and have seen firsthand what actually is going on. Finally, we have the newest entry, Jest Played, Jest Played, and that is also on YouTube. And they do some excellent work there with some terrific graphics explaining once again from another nuanced perspective exactly what police do to entrap people. It is astonishing, folks. And what's fearful for all of us who are fighting this is, what about the intellectually disabled? What about the mentally handicapped and mentally deranged who might be under the influence or something? What about the addictive personalities and people who are sick and on drugs? What about the people who are suffering from dementia or related illnesses? What about people who are the autistic? And what about people who just made a simple mistake and had no interest in going after minors? What about them? Where is any concern for them? And finally, what about children themselves? You know, very often it's not unusual for an 18-year-old to go for a 17-year-old. We used to view that as a private matter. Now it's a crime. It's a crime that police are involving themselves in because it's a rich treasure trove to jump up those statistics and share with the public that this terrible person had done these terrible things against a minor. And while you're out there thinking that some 18-year-old young man lured some 5-year-old behind a shed or something, that's not what's actually happening. Those are happening, but very rarely. They are the exception, not the rule. And they're viewed as the rule and not the exception. What happened to Jacob Wetterling and Adam Walsh are terrible, terrible crimes, but they are rare. They are extraordinarily rare. And if you do the research on it, you find that that is the case. You are being deceived by the police. You're being deceived by the government. They are not doing the good work, because if they actually sat back and watched and did nothing, they'd be bored mighty fast, and there'd be nothing to bump up their statistics, and you start seeing them nosedive right where they belong. Hopefully, one day we can get there where we can focus on real children who are really being harmed, because it's so hard to find those people. They're in the homes. They're in places where children are in with trusted individuals. Those are the places to be looking for it and to follow up on tips. That's why it's important to report it, not to pretend like it's happening online with fake, fictitious children who are never in danger under any circumstances. This is I.C.A.C. Unpacked. Have a good day.